Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is a video kind of a long time in the making. I've been thinking about doing this one for a while now, but every time I would get set and have my thoughts on how these healers should be ranked and how to compare them, something new would come out in the beta and everything would be thrown all to hell. So I kind of waited a little bit on this, and then I decided I was going to change the way I do this in general. Now, tanks, my tanking video, which will be linked down in the description below, I ranked tanks just universally. I can't do that with healers because healers are used in different scenarios where having differing abilities can alter the outcome, I guess you could say, of the experience. So like a healer that is phenomenal in a dungeon or a heroic or a mythic plus 5-man type of scenario may not necessarily be as powerful or successful when it comes to a raid, and vice versa. A healer that could be fantastic and phenomenal in a raid setting may not be able to cut the mustard come a mythic plus or a high level mythic plus. And there's lots of stuff that come into play with this. So I decided that I was going to break down my rankings and my comparisons into different groups. I've broken them down into single target, which is going to be generally going to be your healers that are good in a dungeon type of scenario. I got AoE, which is going to be your healers who are gonna thrive in a raid environment where there's lots of people to heal and they're not responsible for keeping, everybody up. They're gonna share the workload, so to speak. Then I also threw in a little bit as far as utility, because again, that's probably going to be more useful in a raiding environment, but utility is definitely something that a healer having utility will definitely influence a raid leader's decision whether to bring that particular class, if we're looking for class balance in a raid group. And then lastly, I also looked at DPS, because generally speaking, when you get into higher level mythics, as a healer, you're going to have to help out with DPS at some time, because there's not always going to be stuff to heal. Well, there may be stuff to heal, but your ability to DPS could have a greater impact on the success or failure of the group. So with that, I'm going to go into my overview first, and then of each spec, and then I'm going to go back and break down the rankings for each of those categories that I just described. Alright, we're going to start off with the Restoration Druid. Restoration Druids are known for their HOTS. They are the king of heal over time. Now, this is one of the many advantages to them in a raid type of setting, is that they can keep a raid topped off. In addition to being a really good heal over time class, they also bring some utility to the group in the form of a battle res. They have the ability to innervate for mana efficiency, I guess you could say, and generally speaking, they are the type of healer that is going to excel in a raid situation. Now, some of the cons to the Resto Druid is that they are kind of on the boring side. It's basically like just trying to keep HOTS up on as many characters as you can, and again, this is my personal opinion here. You may love that style of play. I don't love that style of play of just basically keeping a bunch of HOTS on a bunch of targets and rotating to make sure they don't fall off. Additionally, they are not so good when it comes to single target heals. Their main single target healing spell, Regrowth, tends to be not so mana efficient, and it's not big enough. It's not really a big heal, and it doesn't excel in situations where I'd say you need to have like a rescue heal, like when your tank is taking a lot of damage and maybe their big cooldown is on cooldown, and they need a big heal to get them through. Druids are not really going to shine in this type of situation. Moving on, we have the Mistweaver Monk. Now, the Mistweaver Monk has gotten some pretty big changes in Battle for Azeroth. Soothing Mist has made its return, and let me say right now, this is something that I am really digging. I like this style of heal much better than what was going on in Legion. I couldn't really get behind that style of healing on the Mistweaver Monk, but this change is definitely welcome, especially considering that while you're channeling Soothing Mist on a target, you can instant cast Vivify and Enveloping Mists, which really gives you a very powerful feeling in single target. Additionally, switching targets is fairly easy, and you can also throw out Renewing Mist, as well as if you talent, there's various other heals available with talent. So that definitely makes the class very interesting and different from that perspective. Another strength of the Mistweaver Monk is that not only do they have good single target heals, they have a good mixture of AoE. They have HOTS in the form of Renewing Mists and Enveloping Mists. So there's kind of like the best of both worlds when it comes to single target and AoE heals. Another definite benefit to the Monk is that it has a play style that can lend itself real easily to DPSing during times that don't require lots of heals. You can switch back and forth between healing and DPSing, which it definitely has a good feel to it. The biggest downside to the Mistweaver Monk, though, is that they do not bring a whole lot of utility. They're definitely not as much utility as some of the other classes, and depending on how you spec and how you play, you can run into mana issues with them. Not the worst of mana issues, but there's definitely exists the possibility for them, more so than some of the other classes on this list. Next up, we have the Holy Paladin. Now, I have to throw a disclaimer out there in the beginning that the Paladin is the first class I played in World of Warcraft, and as such it has a very special place in my heart. I'm a little bit biased here, but I've seen the Paladin go through all of its changes, the good, the bad, the worst, the awful, the unplayable. I've seen it all, and in Battle for Azeroth I have to say that the Paladin seems to be taking a little bit of a step back. So first things first, I gotta say this, that Paladins do what Paladins do, which is tank heals. They're very good at tank heals and single target heals in general. Additionally, they bring a lot of utility to any group. They have lots of various different abilities to help the group out. In addition to being able to help the group out, Paladins have the unique ability to be able to DPS, probably like almost on par with some DPS classes. So if you talent them just right, you can be a Shakadan and you can do good DPS, and that DPS can translate into heals. On the downside, Paladins really don't have AoE. And if that wasn't bad enough, their heals are pretty much weakened. The idea was to have their mastery, a Paladin's mastery, to have their proximity to their target strengthen their heals. But the reality is that their proximity to the target weakens their heals when they're farther away. It's definitely, you're going to have to be in the thick of things, which means you're going to take more damage. Just the reality of it. It's something that all melee have to face, and now a Holy Paladin will have to face it. So they're primarily going to focus on tanks and melee for spot heals, not really going to be able to help out ranged as much, because Blizzard in their infinite wisdom decided to remove Beacon of the Lightbringer. So yeah, Paladins, they're losing their ability to be able to really heal better from any different range. They're back to their mastery, stuck with them being in the thick of things again. And that brings us to the Discipline Priest. Discipline Priest has gotten a little bit of changes. Mainly, the big change has been to the bubble. Power Word Shield is now not on a cooldown. You're going to be back to the old school style of spamming it, but it's not the same as it was before, where you would just spam it, and it had a very overpowered feel, and it basically took away from any other healer in the group's ability to do their thing. Now it's more of I think more of the way it was intended to be, as a preventative damage thing to ease up the damage while your atonement does the atonement healing. And atonement healing is pretty much the same thing. The biggest problem Discipline Priest has now is, without the artifact ability, they don't have a big nuke to give that big heal when you need it, and so they kind of a little bit weaker in some regards, a little bit stronger in others when it comes to healing. Definitely they bring utility in the form of damage reduction. They also have some utility in the form of Power Word Barrier. Their DPS, I think the DPS is probably a big buff to their ability or their contributions to a raid group. I should say is this, that they can deal DPS and heal at the same time. That being said, their AoE, while if they can spread atonement to numerous targets, it's not super strong. I mean, it can have some burst in some situations, but it's not super strong. I would venture to say that their AoE is mediocre. I wouldn't say it's super weak. It's just not super strong like a Resto Druid or some of the other classes that we're going to talk about. I would also add that their single target is fairly limited. They do have Penance, which is, also kind of plays the role of being a DPS spell, but it can be used to heal, and but it's not super strong. The best benefit to it is that it can be cast while healing. Also, they do have Shadow Mend, but Shadow Mend's kind of a tricky spell because the ally will take damage every second until they have taken so much total damage from all sources or leave combat. So it's not the best of abilities. It's good in a pinch when you need it, but it's not a strong single target healing spell that you can rely on, which is kind of one of the shortcomings, I would say, of the Disciplined Priest. Now, on the other end of that, we have the Holy Priest, and the Holy Priest is the typical quintessential healer. I played the Holy Priest all throughout Burning Crusade on, and I played Holy. I've switched back and forth with classes I heal, but Holy is usually the one I've healed with in World of Warcraft when it comes to priests. Except for in Legion, I did do a little bit of Discipline because the artifact weapon had an appeal. Anyway, the thing about the Holy Priest is that the Holy Priest can do it all. They have very strong single target spells. They have strong, varied, different types of AoE. In addition, they have good utility. They have their Symbol of Hope, which helps regain mana. They have Leap of Faith, which can pull people out of bad situations. They are generally just a really strong overall healer in general. The biggest problem with them is that because they're so good at heals and because they have so many different types of heals, they're going to run out of mana. Mana is going to be an issue. It's historically been an issue with Holy Priest and are like hand in hand. Another downside to the Holy Priest is they're not going to be able to do DPS like some of the other classes are. They're healers. That's their deal. They have had some improvements to DPS over time, but again, this is not their area of expertise. They are main focused on healing, and as a result, their DPS is nothing to write home about. Rounding out our healer list is going to be the Restoration Shaman. The Restoration Shaman is what I like to call the jack of all trades, but master of none. They've got pretty good single target heals in the form of Healing Wave and Healing Surge, but those are going to kind of tend to be, the Healing Wave is going to be a little bit slower, the Healing Surge is going to be a little bit more mana intensive, even though it's fast. Their AoE heals are pretty good too in the forms of Healing Rain, Chain Heal, but what I've come to find out is that though the Shaman is pretty good at doing a lot of different things, it's not really great at any of those things. They do bring a good amount of utility to the group, but even that is kind of, it's good, it's okay. They've got a lot in their totems, but like I said, jack of all trades, master of none. All right, now for the moment you've all been waiting for, and that's the ranking. First off, we're going to start the rankings with single target heals. At the bottom of this list is going to be the Resto Druid. I don't think that's any big surprise here. This is not where they shine. Next up is going to be the Disciplined Priest at number 5. They, again, not a big surprise here. Their single target heals are fairly limited. Number 4, in that middle zone area where they will be for pretty much almost every one of these categories, is the Shaman. Jack of all trades, master of none. They do have 2 single target heal spells. They have a hot, but generally this is not where they shine either. Number 3 is the Holy Priest. Now, the Holy Priest can do a lot of AoE, and that's probably what they're known for more, but Power Word Serenity, or Holy Word Serenity, I should say, that sucker can heal for a big amount. As a 110 Holy Priest, I have crit for 20k with that heal, so they're definitely up there. Next, I would say is for single target is the monk, because they can channel soothing mist, they can throw their hots, they can switch targets easily. They're really good with single target. But of course, the king of the single target is definitely going to be the holy paladin. They're tank healers, and of course, they're going to shine in single target. All right, the next ranking is going to be the AoE or raid heals ranking. Now, it's no surprise that the bottom of the list is going to be the Holy Paladin. The Holy Paladin does not have very many AoE healing abilities. Pretty much Light of the Dawn and Aura Mastery, if you spec it right, it's going to be the only AoE heals that a Holy Paladin can do. Number 5 on the list is going to be the Disciplined Priest. Again, Disciplined Priest can put the Holy Word Shield on a number of targets, which kind of helps AoE wise when it comes to preventing damage. Plus, it puts atonement on these targets, and atonement heals can be done to a large group. It's not necessarily always going to be really big or really powerful, but it's definitely more than the Holy Paladin. Number 4 on the list is going to be Mistweaver Monk. Mistweaver Monk has a pretty good AoE heal in the form of Essence Font. Additionally, they have Revival. Even though it's on a big cooldown, it is a big heal, and it's definitely an AoE ability that sets them above some of the other specs on this list. So next up is going to be the Resto Shaman. Jack of all trade, master of none. I'm going to say that till I'm blue in the face, and you're going to get sick of hearing it, but it's very true for them. They have a number of different AoE heals in the form of chain heals. They have Healing Rain. They have some talents that you can get that can do even more AoE heals. They have healing totems that can heal for a number of party members. So yeah, definitely they're a little bit higher on this list than some of the others, but not necessarily as powerful enough to really put them on the next level. Speaking of that next level, after the Resto Shaman is going to be the Holy Priest. Holy Priest has those rescue heals in an AoE form, and when I say that, I'm talking about Prayer of Healing, I'm talking about Divine Hymn, and these spells are spells that can heal a number of people for a very good amount. Additionally, they have some other AoE heals in the form of, you know, their Renew can be placed on, like a hot on a lot of different people can consider an AoE heal. Plus, their Prayer of Mending is definitely one of those abilities that is also kind of like an AoE ability as well, and that it jumps, it heals when they get damaged. So they're pretty much the top tier of this list. But the very top is going to have to go to the Restoration Druid and their hots and their efflorescence and their abilities to just Tranquility too. Tranquility is pretty much the king of AoE heals. So that's why we're going to have Restoration Druid at the top of this list. This next category of ranking is pretty much what I like to call the runner-up prize. It's going to be your utility. Now, utility is not something that's going to be the deciding factor in whether you bring a particular class or spec to a group, but it may be something that kind of causes one spec to win out over the other if it's got a little bit more utility. So that being said, the bottom of this list is going to be the Mistweaver Monk. Mistweaver Monk does not have a whole lot of utility. Nothing really jumps out. They do have leg sweep, and they do have paralysis for some crowd control, and you can talent for a little bit more crowd control, but that's pretty much it. The biggest thing that they really bring is their the debuff they put on when they do damage, which comes in the form of a passive ability they have called Mystic Touch. So not really a whole lot right there. Next up on the utility list is going to be the Disciplined Priest. Disciplined Priests have their fears, like all the priests have. They have Rapture, which now basically just makes your Power Word Shield a little bit more powerful. So that kind of, it's a little bit of a boost. It's a cooldown. They have their Barrier, which I guess you could consider utility in that everyone can get under it and kind of take a little bit less damage, but it's still kind of more along the lines of a heal. They have, they don't really have a whole lot that they can do. So they've got a little bit more, I think, than the Mistweaver Monk, but not a whole lot more than that. So next up on the list is going to be, no surprise here, in the middle of the pack, the Shaman. Shaman have their totems. Their totems can do a variety of things, especially if you spec for particular totems. You can give them a battle res if you spec for it, although this battle res thing seems kind of a little bit hit or miss, and I don't know necessarily that's the talent I'm going to take for a Restoration Shaman in every scenario. Additionally, they have totems like the Windrush totem, which I think maybe one that might be worth taking in some occasions that helps speed your party through. They have Earthwall Totem, which you can also talent for if you don't want to do the Ancestral Protection Totem, and this basically just directs damage away from party members. So yeah, they've got also a big thing about them is they have an interrupt, which is not something that all of the healers have readily available to them. But yeah, they have reincarnation also, so after they die, they can pretty much be brought back to life. They have water walking, which I guess is kind of utility, but it's not necessarily useful in every situation. They have Hex, which is great for crowd control. Definitely the biggest thing for them is they have Bloodlust / Heroism, depending on Horde or Alliance, which is a huge buff. But again, it's one of those things you can get from other sources too. But it's definitely a thing that helps out the spec as a healer. Next up, at number 3, is going to be the Holy Priest. So the Holy Priest doesn't have as many utility spells. I mean, it has the Fear, like the Discipline Priest. It has Life Grip, which is what is commonly known as, to pull people out of places where they don't need to be, which is definite utility. But the big thing about them is a symbol of hope. This is a game changer. It is a huge cooldown that can be the difference between a raid group getting a boss down and not getting a boss down. And because of how powerful it is, that's why I rank them at this spot a little bit higher than some of the other classes, even though they don't have as many different types for utility. Number 2 on the list for utility is going to be the Restoration Druid. Restoration Druid has a battle res. That's the biggest thing with them. That's definitely something you want to have, and it's not like the Chamois battle res that's kind of hit or miss depending on how it's used. The other thing they have is Innervate. Innervate can be a game changer when it comes to rotating in cooldowns to keep stuff healed and to keep the group alive. Additionally, they have in addition to their ability to CC with Ursul's Vortex, they also can talent for Mass Entanglement. So they have some crowd control. They have Soothe, which has been brought back to help get rid of enrage effects, which is definitely one of those things you want to have if you got a boss that's going to enrage and you can take it off before he kills everyone. So that's definitely a powerful utility. So that's why I have the Resto Druid at number 2. But number 1, the king of utility, it's their niche. It's the Holy Paladin. Holy Paladins have so many different abilities that are not just healing centric, but they can free people from snares and roots. They can free people from taking all damage with their blessings. They've got Blessing of Protection, Blessing of Sacrifice, Blessing of Freedom. They have just so many different things that they can do that can save a group. And these are big cooldowns. These are big abilities that are game changing. And I think it's worth mentioning that this is their thing. A Holy Paladin and Paladins in general, they may not necessarily be the best at any one particular thing, but they definitely bring the utility to the table that makes them a valued member of any raid team. Alright, this video is getting ridiculously long, so I'm going to speed through my last ranking, which is DPS. Now, I know a lot of people aren't going to care about this because they heal because they don't want to be DPS, but for those of you who do care, here we go. Starting off at the bottom is the Holy Priest. Holy Priest does not have access to a lot of DPS abilities, but they're great healers, so it doesn't really matter. Not a big deal. Next on the list is the Resto Druid. Resto Druids have access, I would say it would make most sense to go Boomkin to do DPS. They have access to more abilities. It's kind of awkward to switch back from Boomkin form to their humanoid form, so that's why they're kind of near at the bottom. Plus their damaging abilities don't do a whole heck of a lot of damage. So number 4 on the list, not a big surprise, is the Shaman. Now, Shaman have access to their Flame Shock, the Lava Burst, all their DPS spells. They're not super powerful. They have them. They're easily accessible. Middle of the pack story of the Shaman's life. So next up is the Mistweaver Monk. Mistweaver Monk's a little bit more fun because they have Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Rising Sun Kick. They can be spec'd to have these DPS abilities give mana back, and they're going to put that debuff on your target that's going to increase the damage it takes. So kind of useful, kind of fun, got a good interplay. Number 2 on the list is going to be the Discipline Priest. Discipline Priest heal by doing damage. That's what makes the spec fun. That's what makes the spec different, and that's pretty much what gives it the number 2 spot on here. They've got a lot of different abilities to do damage, and those abilities translate into heals. So they are number 2 on the list. Number 1 is going to be the Holy Paladin. And the reason I say this is because I feel like Blizzard has been listening and they have brought back the Shockedin. You can spec this so you can do crazy damage. I did a dungeon, and let me tell you, the Demonology Warlock's mind was completely blown when on the boss fight I was number 2 right underneath them and nobody in the group died. So yeah, definitely fun, great to play. So that's going to do it for this video. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. If you don't like this video, don't like the video. Dislike the video. Tell me I'm a noob, but if you're going to tell me I'm a noob, tell me why I'm a noob. Don't just say you're a noob. I know that, okay? I'm not a professional World of Warcraft player. I'm your average player. I'm your average guy here. If I am wrong, you disagree with something I've said in this video, tell me why you disagree. Give me reasons. I like a good discussion. I have an open mind. I'm willing to listen to what you have to say. So, like I said, let me know. Give me details. Give me evidence to support your claim. And you know what? I may just say, you're right. You are 100% right. I didn't think of that. So that's going to do it for me. I will see you all next time.